If there was any doubt in your mind that the Poco M2 Pro is a rebranded Redmi Note 9 Pro / Note 9 Pro Max, then this video will surely clear it. But there is still a lot of confusion in everyone's mind as to which of these three very similar, some would say identical smartphones should one buy. Well, for your viewing pleasure, that is exactly what I'll try to answer today. In this video, I'll be comparing the Poco M2 Pro to the Redmi Note 9 Pro and the Note 9 Pro Max end to end so that I can tell you which of these three phones, very similar phones, should you actually spend your money on. But guys, before we get on with the video, make sure to hit the bell icon and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already so that you don't miss out on any quality tech content that we put out. Now that you have done that, let's get on with the full comparison of the Poco M2 Pro, the Redmi Note 9 Pro and the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max. Now design-wise, all three of these smartphones look exactly the same, so there's not much to compare here. But what I will say is that all these three phones are quite possibly the most premium-looking smartphones under Rs 20,000, which can be accredited to their all-glass design, glass on the front as well as the back, which gives them, all three of them, a very premium in-hand feel. So what I will say is that design-wise, between the three, just go for the one that, according to you, has the best colors and finish. I personally like the two-toned look of the Poco M2 Pro quite a lot, and the product shots of the green colorway look quite good too, so I would pick this phone over the other two. Also, you get a better-looking black TPU case with the phone, which is not going to get yellow like the ones on the Redmi Note 9 Pro or the Pro Max, so there's that as well. You'll also get a side-mounted fingerprint sensor on all the three phones, along with facial recognition, which worked equally well on all the three handsets. There's no missing sensor on the Poco M2 Pro as compared to the Redmi phones either, so be it an electronic compass or a proximity sensor, you'll get all the necessary sensors with all the three phones. Oh, and there is an LED notification embedded under the earpiece grill on all the three models too. Display-wise, all three phones are exactly the same, and you're going to get a 6.67-inch Full HD Plus panel, LCD panel with all these three smartphones. Now, the displays are capped at 60Hz on all the three phones, and you get a centrally positioned punch hole notch with the phones. Unsurprisingly, you will get Widevine L1 certification with all the three phones too, and the touch sample rate is the same on the three models as well, with it maxing out at 180 touch samples per second. In fact, the only difference I could tell between the three panels was that the one on the M2 Pro swayed towards slightly cooler tones, and you'll notice a bluish tint when viewing content on the screen. Now, both the Redmi phones offered a relatively warmer display with a yellowish tinge, but be that as it may, all the three phones should offer a similar media consumption and gaming experience. Okay, so in terms of performance, all these three phones come with Qualcomm Snapdragon 720G chipset, and when it comes to when you factor in that they also run a very similar custom skin, you won't really find a lot of difference in the performance, be it when you're running synthetic benchmarks or when you're just playing games on these three phones. Now, as an example, I've compared Geekbench 5 and Antutu scores here, and you'll notice that they are comparable to one another. Similarly, for gaming, all three phones run games at the same settings, with titles like PUBG maxing out at HD and High or Smooth and Ultra on the three phones. Now, surprise, surprise, the audio setup offered by the three phones is the same too, with the mono speaker at the bottom getting satisfactorily loud on all the three handsets. You also get a headphone jack with the three phones, and since none of them are high-res certified, the audio performance from the jack is on par with one another too. That being said, I noticed that the calls were the clearest on the Poco M2 Pro, and it was also the phone which offered me the best download speeds, followed by the Redmi Note 9 Pro and finally the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max. Now, one of the biggest differences between these three phones that I'm comparing today is the software. Now, while all these three phones run Android 10 with the skin of MIUI version 11 on top, Poco promises no ads with its software. Now, so far, the company's claims seem to be true, and even though the smartphone comes with the same amount of bloatware as the Redmi Note 9 Pro and the Note 9 Pro Max, my notifications were completely void of any ads. Now, the Redmi Note 9 Pro siblings, on the other hand, don't make any such promises, so time and again, you will see a prompt to download a recommended app or a news article on your notifications tray. Regardless, if you're planning to buy any one of these three phones, I'd advise you to remove all the bloatware and disable the system apps that cannot be uninstalled. And while we are on the subject of security, you should also know that both the Poco M2 Pro and the Redmi Note 9 Pro come with June security patch, whereas the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max is yet to receive that update and it is still stuck on April security patch. Now the battery life of all the three phones is the same too, which shouldn't come as a surprise considering these phones have the same processors, the same custom skins and the same 5000 mAh batteries. Now charging speeds however are the slowest on the Redmi Note 9 Pro as it only comes with an 18-watt charger, whereas both the Poco M2 Pro as well as the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max offer 33-watt brakes bundled in the box. Now rounding off this comparison is the camera section. Now both the Redmi Note 9 Pro as well as the Poco M2 Pro offer the same 48 megapixel quad camera setups on the back. The Pro Max however comes with a 64 megapixel main sensor and the assisting cameras on all the three phones are an 8 megapixel wide angle lens, a 5 megapixel macro lens and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. For selfies, the Pro Max comes with a 32 megapixel selfie camera, whereas the M2 Pro and the Redmi Note 9 Pro offer a 16 megapixel selfie shooter. Now here's the thing. The camera prowess of all these three phones is quite comparable to one another. In fact, between the Poco M2 Pro and the Redmi Note 9 Pro, which use identical camera stacks, the only difference I noticed was that the shots from the Redmi Note 9 Pro were slightly oversaturated in comparison. Everything else was exactly the same. Here's a good example to substantiate the same. If you zoom into Brownie's fur or look at the flower pots and the plants in the background, then the Redmi Note 9 Pro's image will exhibit slightly boosted browns and greens. And when you compare these photos to the one from the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max, then here you'll notice that the Pro Max's photo is the most dramatic and it's boosting up the greens and even the red in the collar of my pet quite significantly. Now that being said, upon a closer crop, it also has more details when compared to the M2 Pro and the Redmi Note 9 Pro, which is evident if you look at Brownie's tail or the mud scattered around his leg. In the next shot, however, you'll see how all the three phones have similar dynamic range as they all have brought out the details from the shadows and resolved the highlights in a similar manner. High-res shots netted a similar result too. The ones from the M2 Pro and the Redmi Note 9 Pro are indistinguishable from one another, barring slightly boosted greens on the latter's photo. But when compared to the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max, the phone's 64 megapixel main sensor offers considerably better details, which can be seen if you zoom into the water tanker in the background or the bark of the tree. Same goes for the wide-angle photos from the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max too, which despite being overtly saturated, offered slightly better corner details when compared to the Redmi Note 9 Pro and the Poco M2 Pro. As for selfies, the photos from the M2 Pro and the Redmi Note 9 Pro have literally no difference, but the 32 megapixel sensor on the Note 9 Pro Max offered superior details. Now this can be seen if you zoom into the photos and pan to the objects in the background, wherein the plants in my garden are only defined well in the Pro Max's selfie. Everything else, including the background cutout and portrait shots from the front as well as the rear cameras too. When it comes to low light, the shots from both the Poco M2 Pro and the Redmi Note 9 Pro are on par with one another, with the shot from the M2 Pro being slightly duller, but in terms of details they are both exactly the same. Now when compared to the Pro Max, both the images pale in comparison and the Pro Max offers much better details at a closer crop, be it with the night mode enabled or disabled. So, which of these three smartphones should you buy? Well, between the Redmi Note 9 Pro and the Poco M2 Pro, I don't think there is any point in buying the Note 9 Pro anymore because they are both priced the same and the Poco M2 Pro does everything that the Note 9 Pro does, but it also offers no ads in its software and it comes with a much faster wired charging brick. Now, between the Redmi Note 9 Pro Max and the Poco M2 Pro, go for the Note 9 Pro Max only if you want the best possible details out of your photos. Now, other than that, everything that this phone does, this phone can also do, and it starts at a much lower price point as compared to the Note 9 Pro Max. So if you want slightly better details in your photos, and I do mean slightly because there is not a day and a night difference between the camera performance of these two phones. In fact, I actually prefer the M2 Pro's more authentic shots as compared to the Note 9 Pro Max's slightly oversaturated images. So between these two smartphones, only buy this if you want slightly better details in your photos. Otherwise, just buy the M2 Pro. Okay, so I hope you guys now know which of these three smartphones makes the most sense for you to buy. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, do give us a big thumbs up and share this video with your friends. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, this is Prateek from Mr. Phone signing off.